Becoming your best self doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't come from wishing, comparing, or copying someone else's life. It's not about being perfect. It's about becoming authentic. The best version of you isn't found outside, it's discovered within, and it takes deliberate steps to bring it to the surface. Let me walk you through 5 steps, 5 principles that when practiced daily will bring you closer to who you were meant to be. You can't create lasting change without purpose. You can have all the talent, resources, and ambition in the world, but if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, you'll lose steam the moment things get hard. Purpose is the engine behind progress. It's the reason you get back up after failure, the reason you say no to distractions, and the reason you keep showing up when no one's watching. Without it, every action feels hollow. With it, even the smallest step has meaning. People often confuse purpose with passion. Passion is a feeling. Purpose is a commitment. Passion fades when you're tired or frustrated, but purpose keeps you grounded. It gives you something to aim for when emotions run dry. When your actions are tied to purpose, you stop chasing outcomes and start building something that lasts. Success becomes a byproduct of meaning, not the goal itself. Purpose is not something you find overnight. It's not a lightning bolt or a moment of sudden clarity. It's discovered through reflection, action, and honesty. You start to notice what energizes you and what drains you. You pay attention to the work that makes you feel proud, not because it looks good, but because it feels right. You identify moments when you felt useful, when you contributed something that mattered, even if no one gave you credit. Those are clues, and over time, they form a pattern. The problem is, many people never stop long enough to ask themselves why. They chase validation, they mimic others' paths, they confuse busyness with meaning, and before long, they wake up feeling disconnected from their lives. That's what happens when you move through the world without purpose. You drift. You follow routines you didn't choose. You say yes to things that don't align. You let other people define success for you, and deep down, you know you're off course. But when you have a clear why, everything changes. Purpose gives your work emotional weight. It transforms routine tasks into meaningful contributions. It helps you endure setbacks, because you're no longer just trying to win, you're trying to serve something bigger than yourself. You become more resilient, more focused, and more fulfilled. Purpose also simplifies decisions. When you know what truly matters to you, the noise starts to fade. You stop obsessing over what other people are doing. You stop spreading yourself thin, trying to do everything. You gain the power to say no, not because you're avoiding effort, but because you're protecting what matters. You become intentional, and intentional people are powerful. But let's be honest, living with purpose isn't always glamorous. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's lonely, sometimes it feels like you're walking against the crowd. Because when you live with purpose, you're not chasing applause, you're chasing alignment. And that means making sacrifices, staying consistent, and holding yourself accountable to a higher standard, even when it's inconvenient. That's why purpose is not just a motivational idea, it's a discipline. It requires you to slow down and ask tough questions. What kind of impact do I want to have? What kind of legacy do I want to leave behind? Am I spending my time in ways that reflect what I say I care about? These questions aren't easy, but they're necessary if you want to live a life that's real and fulfilling. Purpose is also not about perfection. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to start with honesty and courage. Be willing to ask why before you say yes. Be willing to walk away from things that no longer serve you. Be willing to build slowly and deliberately, knowing that purpose isn't a finish line, it's a way of being. And the beautiful thing is, once you align your life with purpose, you become unstoppable. Not because things get easier, but because you finally care enough to keep going. Progress becomes meaningful, failure becomes feedback, and the journey itself becomes something you can be proud of. Because when you live with purpose, you don't just achieve more, you become more. Growth begins the moment we stop lying to ourselves. Not the kind of blatant, obvious lies, but the subtle ones. The quiet justifications. The stories we tell ourselves to feel better. We say we're too busy when we're actually afraid. We say it's not the right time when we're simply procrastinating. We convince ourselves that we're okay with where we are, even though a voice inside is screaming for more. Self-honesty doesn't always come naturally. It requires courage. The courage to face our own reflection without filters, excuses, or denial. The reason self-honesty is so rare is because it's uncomfortable. It forces us to confront parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. Our insecurities, our flaws, our regrets. It shines a light on the gap between who we are and who we say we want to be. But that discomfort is necessary, because without truth there can be no clarity. And without clarity, growth becomes guesswork. Most people are stuck not because they lack talent, but because they lack the ability to be honest with themselves. It's easier to blame circumstances, other people, or bad luck than it is to admit we're the ones holding ourselves back. But growth requires ownership. And ownership begins with the words, "This is on me, my actions, my choices, my mindset." That kind of honesty is liberating. It doesn't trap you, it frees you. Because the moment you accept that you're the one responsible, you also realize you have the power to change. You can't control everything in life, but you can always control your response. You can shift your habits, you can adjust your attitude, you can reframe your thinking, but only if you're willing to be brutally honest with yourself about where you are and what needs to change. Self-honesty also means admitting when we're not okay. There's strength in saying, I'm struggling. There's power in acknowledging burnout, fear, or confusion. Pretending to be fine doesn't make you strong, it makes you stuck. Real strength is rooted in truth. And the truth is, no one grows without falling apart a little first. Being honest about what you're feeling allows you to process, to heal, and to move forward. But self-honesty doesn't stop at pain. It also means recognizing your own patterns, the way you sabotage yourself, the way you avoid difficult conversations, the way you let fear mask itself as logic. It means catching yourself in the act and calling it what it is, not what you wish it was. Because you can't improve a behavior you won't admit exists. It's not about beating yourself up, it's about being real. Growth doesn't require perfection, it requires awareness. And the more aware you become of your blind spots, the easier it becomes to break the cycles holding you back. Sometimes that means journaling, sometimes it means talking to someone you trust, but always it means slowing down and paying attention. Honesty with yourself is what builds integrity. It makes your decisions more aligned. It makes your relationships more authentic. It makes your goals more sustainable because they're based on truth, not fantasy. And the more you live in truth, the less energy you waste pretending. You become lighter, clearer, and more focused. Most importantly, self-honesty creates self-respect. When you look in the mirror and know you're not hiding, you gain confidence, not from ego, but from integrity. You trust yourself more. You stop chasing validation and start chasing values. That's when real lasting growth happens, not surface level change, but transformation from the inside out. You can't heal what you won't admit, you can't fix what you refuse to see, and you can't grow into your best self while clinging to a false version of who you are. Growth demands truth, the kind of truth that stings a little but sets you free. The world will always try to sell you shortcuts and surface solutions, but the real work, the deep, powerful, permanent work, starts within, with one simple, terrifying, and liberating choice to tell yourself the truth, every single day. That's the foundation of growth, and that's where your transformation begins. Motivation is unreliable. It's fleeting. It shows up when it wants to, when the mood is right, when the weather is good, when life is smooth. But discipline stays. It doesn't ask how you feel. It doesn't care if you're inspired. It just shows up over and over again, without permission, without excuses. That's why discipline outlasts motivation. And that's why people who rely only on motivation often find themselves stuck, starting strong, then quitting early. Discipline is the quiet commitment to do what needs to be done, even when you don't want to do it. It's waking up before the sun, because you said you would. It's going to the gym when no one's watching. It's choosing focus over distraction, action over comfort. It's not glamorous, it's not exciting, but it's effective. While motivation burns fast like a match, discipline burns slow like a candle, and it keeps burning long after the initial spark fades. When people ask how to stay consistent, what they're really asking is, how do I stay motivated? The better question is, how do I build discipline? Because motivation comes from emotion. Discipline comes from values. Motivation asks, do I feel like it today? Discipline asks, is this who I said I want to be? And that's the real test, doing the right thing on the days when everything in you wants to take the easy route. Think of the people you admire most: leaders, athletes, creatives, entrepreneurs. Do you think they felt inspired every single day? Of course not. They struggled, they doubted, they got tired, but they kept showing up. That's the difference between dabbling and committing, between wishing and working, between average and exceptional. Discipline bridges the gap between your goals and your results. But discipline isn't just about grinding endlessly, it's about alignment. When your actions are aligned with your purpose, discipline becomes easier to sustain. You don't have to force it every day. You simply remind yourself of the bigger picture. Why am I doing this? Who am I doing it for? What future am I building? When your why is clear, the how becomes manageable. Still, discipline will ask you to sacrifice. It will ask you to delay gratification. It will ask you to make choices others won't. While others scroll, you study. While others sleep, you strategize. While others seek comfort, you pursue growth. It can be isolating, but the reward isn't just what you accomplish, it's who you become in the process. You develop grit, you build resilience, you earn your self-respect. And here's the truth most people won't say: you won't always feel like doing the work. That's normal, you're human. There will be mornings when the bed feels too warm, nights when your mind is too tired, days when progress feels invisible. That's when discipline matters most. Not when it's easy, but when it's inconvenient. That's when you prove to yourself that you're serious. It doesn't have to be perfect, just consistent. Small daily actions, repeated over time, build massive results. You don't need a grand gesture, you need a habit. 10 pages a day, one workout, one honest conversation, one hard choice. Discipline turns ordinary days into momentum, and momentum turns into transformation. People think success is about talent or luck, but often it's about patience and persistence. Discipline keeps you moving when progress feels slow. It keeps you grounded when emotions try to pull you off track. It's the structure you lean on when your feelings fluctuate. And it's what separates the ones who dream from the ones who deliver. In the end, motivation is a spark, but discipline is the firewood. It's what keeps the flame alive when everything around you tries to put it out.
You don't have to be the most gifted. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be willing to show up again and again and again. That's how change happens. That's how goals are achieved. That's how legacies are built. Not by waiting for the perfect mood, but by choosing every day to act in alignment with who you want to become. Motivation may start the journey, but discipline is what takes you across the finish line. We live in a world that constantly tells us to focus on ourselves, chase your dreams, build your brand, get what you deserve. And while there's nothing wrong with ambition or success, many people reach the top only to discover something is missing. They have the money, the recognition, the lifestyle, and still feel empty. Why? Because fulfillment doesn't come from what you accumulate, it comes from what you contribute. True fulfillment is born through service. Serving others gives your life depth. It takes you out of your own head, your own problems, your own limitations, and connects you to something bigger. It reminds you that your life isn't just about you. It's about the impact you have on others, the way you show up, the way you help, the way you leave people better than you found them. That's the real measure of a meaningful life. Service doesn't always mean grand gestures or charity work. It means choosing to add value wherever you are. It means asking, how can I make this moment better for someone else? It could be mentoring a colleague who's struggling, listening to a friend who feels alone, sharing knowledge without expecting praise. Small acts of service add up, and over time they transform your sense of purpose. Fulfillment through service isn't just emotional, it's biological. Studies show that helping others activates the same part of the brain that lights up when we receive rewards. Serving others actually boosts our mood, lowers stress, and improves mental health. We're wired to connect. And when we serve, we align with something deeply human, the need to matter. The problem is our culture often glorifies self-focus. We're told to hustle, to grind, to do you. And yes, discipline and self-investment matter, but if everything you do only leads back to your own benefit, you'll eventually feel isolated. Because fulfillment doesn't grow in isolation, it grows in contribution. When you use your gifts to elevate someone else, you feel it on a soul level. You know you did something that mattered. This doesn't mean you have to put yourself last. Service isn't about self-sacrifice to the point of burnout. It's about alignment. It's about recognizing that your greatest fulfillment often comes when your growth benefits more than just you. When your success becomes someone else's hope. When your voice becomes someone else's guidance. The most fulfilled people aren't always the most successful. They're the most useful. They measure their value not by what they have, but by what they give. And ironically, the more you give, the more you grow. Because service stretches you. It teaches you patience, humility, and empathy. It forces you to think beyond your own lens and to understand others more deeply. And in doing so, it shapes you into a better, stronger, more compassionate human being. When you serve with sincerity, not for recognition, but because it's the right thing to do, you earn something money can't buy, self-respect. And that's the kind of fulfillment that doesn't fade. It stays with you. It gives you peace at night and pride in the mirror. The most beautiful part about service is that anyone can do it. You don't need status, wealth, or permission. You just need the willingness to care, to act, to contribute. No one can take that away from you. No matter where you are in life, you can serve. And the more you do, the more meaning your life takes on. If you're feeling lost, disconnected, or unfulfilled, ask yourself, who am I serving? Who benefits from my existence? If you can't answer that, start there. You don't need to change the world. Just change someone's moment. Be the person who uplifts, who supports, who contributes. That's how you find yourself, by giving a piece of yourself. In the end, success will impress people, but service will impact them. And the legacy that matters isn't the one with the most followers. It's the one that made the most lives better. When your focus shifts from what you can get to what you can give, your life becomes richer, deeper, and infinitely more fulfilling. Because real fulfillment doesn't come from what you build for yourself. It comes from what you build for others. In the rush of everyday life, it's easy to lose sight of yourself. You wake up, check your phone, dive into tasks, move from one thing to the next, and before you know it, another day has passed without really checking in. Without asking yourself, how am I doing? What am I learning? Am I becoming the person I want to be? That's where daily reflection comes in. It's not just a practice, it's a tool, a mirror, a method of slowing down just enough to meet yourself in the present and understand who you are becoming. Reflection builds self-awareness, and self-awareness is the foundation of all growth. Because if you don't understand yourself, your habits, your patterns, your triggers, you're not living intentionally. You're reacting, you're operating on autopilot, and autopilot doesn't lead to greatness, it leads to stagnation. Taking time each day to reflect helps you gain clarity. You begin to recognize your wins, your losses, your moments of strength, and your areas of weakness. You stop repeating the same mistakes because you're actually learning from them. You stop blindly chasing goals that don't align with your values. You gain insight into your decisions, your relationships, your reactions, and most importantly, your inner voice. People often think growth is about action, but it's also about awareness. You can hustle all day long, but if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing or how it's affecting you, you might be building in the wrong direction. Reflection is how you make sure your ladder is leaning against the right wall. It turns movement into progress. And it doesn't take hours. 5 minutes of honest reflection can do more for your mindset than an entire day of unconscious activity. It's about quality, not quantity. You can ask yourself simple but powerful questions. What did I do well today? What drained me? What gave me energy? What did I avoid? What am I grateful for? What can I do better tomorrow? These questions, answered daily, sharpen your awareness and keep you aligned with your values. Over time, you start to notice trends. Maybe you're constantly exhausted after certain meetings. Maybe your best ideas come after your morning walk. Maybe you've been avoiding a difficult conversation for weeks. Reflection brings those patterns to the surface, and awareness gives you the power to change them. It also teaches humility. When you reflect honestly, you realize that you're not perfect. You see your flaws, your blind spots, your ego, but you also see your progress. You acknowledge your resilience, your growth, your effort. Reflection lets you celebrate without arrogance and correct without shame. It builds a balanced view of yourself, grounded in truth. Daily reflection can take many forms: journaling, prayer, meditation, a quiet walk, a conversation with a trusted friend. What matters is that you create a space where you can be real, where you don't perform, you don't impress, you just observe. You step out of the noise and reconnect with what matters, and the impact spills into every area of your life. When you're more self-aware, you're a better leader, a better partner, a better decision maker. You stop reacting emotionally and start responding thoughtfully. You stop taking everything personally because you understand your own triggers. You become more present, more focused, more intentional. Reflection also builds resilience. Life is unpredictable. You won't always have control over what happens, but you can always reflect on how you handled it and what you'll do next time. That process creates emotional maturity. It teaches you how to adapt, how to learn, how to grow under pressure. Reflection turns every experience into a lesson, if you're willing to pay attention. In a world that's obsessed with speed, reflection is a rebellion. It's saying, I will not be mindlessly busy. I will not let the world decide who I become. I will pause. I will look inward. I will learn. And in that stillness, in that space between action and understanding, you grow. You become wiser, calmer, more intentional, not because life slows down, but because you do. And in doing so, you find clarity. You find direction. You find yourself. Because the truth is, if you don't take time to reflect, you're just going through the motions. But when you do, when you reflect with honesty and consistency, you gain the one thing every successful life is built on: deep, unshakable self-awareness. In a world that constantly pressures you to fit in, stand out, blend in, and perform all at once, staying true to yourself can feel like a radical act. But authenticity, being real, being honest, being you, isn't a weakness. It's your greatest strength. Because when you operate from your true self, you stop wasting energy pretending. You stop filtering your life through the expectations of others. You lead, speak, and live from a place of clarity and conviction. And people feel that. They trust it. Because the world doesn't need more copies. It needs you. Unfiltered, unedited, unapologetic. Most people wear masks, not because they're dishonest, but because somewhere along the way, they were taught that who they really are isn't enough. So they play roles. They become what they think others want to see. They bury their quirks, their flaws, their truth, just to belong. But here's the irony. The more you hide who you are, the less connected you feel. And the more you own who you are, the more people are drawn to you. Authenticity is magnetic, because it's rare. Being authentic doesn't mean you have to bear everything, or stop evolving. It means that your actions, words, and choices are aligned with your values. It means you say what you mean. You stand by what you believe. You make decisions not to impress others, but to stay true to yourself. That alignment creates confidence, not from ego, but from integrity. When you show up as your real self, you build trust in your relationships, your leadership, your creativity. Trust grows when people can feel your consistency. You're not putting on a performance. You're not shifting with every trend or opinion. You're rooted, and that steadiness makes people feel safe. It makes you reliable, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. Authenticity is also deeply practical. You can't create anything meaningful while pretending to be someone you're not. Whether you're building a business, writing a book, leading a team, or raising a family, sustainable impact requires truth. Because only when you know who you are can you figure out how to serve. When you stop copying others, you finally have space to create something original. But let's be honest, authenticity takes courage. It means being willing to disappoint people, to be misunderstood, to be judged. Because not everyone will agree with you. Not everyone will like the real you. But those who do, those who see you, get you, and respect you, are the ones worth building with. Every time you choose to be real over liked, you trade popularity for peace. And peace is the foundation of power. You will be tested. There will be moments when staying true to yourself feels risky. Maybe you'll be tempted to shrink to keep the peace, or to exaggerate to prove your worth, or to silence your truth just to fit in. But every time you betray yourself for approval, you reinforce the belief that your real self isn't good enough. And that lie is what keeps so many people stuck, burned out, disconnected, and quietly resentful. The freedom you're looking for doesn't come from achieving more. It comes from aligning more, from shedding the layers that don't belong to you, from owning your story, even the messy parts, especially the messy parts. Because that's where your humanity lives. And people don't connect to perfection, they connect to honesty. Being authentic also gives you clarity. When you know who you are, decisions become simpler. You're not swayed by every opinion. You're not trapped in comparison. You move with intention, because your compass isn't external, it's internal.
You trust your own voice. You stop asking for permission to be yourself and start giving yourself the space to grow. And as you grow, your authenticity evolves with you. Because being real doesn't mean staying the same. It means staying honest. Honest about what you value. Honest about what you need. Honest about who you're becoming. That honesty is your edge. It's what makes your work original, your relationships deep, and your presence unforgettable. In the end, the people who make the deepest impact aren't always the loudest. They're the ones who are fully themselves, and in being themselves, they give others permission to do the same. That's the ripple effect of authenticity. It liberates others just by existing. So stop editing your truth to make others comfortable. Stop dimming your light to fit in shadows. Your authenticity is not a liability. It's your superpower. When you stand in it, speak from it, and lead with it, you become unstoppable. Because nothing is more powerful than a person who is real.